All right, welcome to the fourth episode of The Window, the podcast of Montgomery Bell Academy. I'm Zach Riven, a junior at MBA, and we are excited and grateful here at Vanderbilt University today to have Coach Clark Lea with us today. Coach, thank you so much for being here with us.
It's my pleasure.
Well, I've been interviewing coaches at MBA, and I figured that you'd be perfect for the podcast this week because not only did you go to MBA, but you played sports at the higher level in college and you're coaching at the higher level. So we kind of go by category here. You went to MBA, so our first one is, how did MBA help prepare you for not only this role at Vanderbilt, but your role or playing in college as well?
Well, MBA was huge in my development. I don't know that MBA was what I wanted. I had gone to public school. I went to Moore Middle School in the 8th grade. I was just kind of heading down a path. It wasn't even like a bad path, but just I wasn't achieving at the level. My parents started to see kind of this falling off of some of the details off the field and in the classroom. And I almost kind of, I think, started as a threat. You know, we're going to send you to private school. And at the time, I was open to it. Maybe being a 13-year-old, I just said, well, that's fine. Let's do it then. You know, kind of trying to call their bluff. And when I visited a few different schools. But when I visited MBA, first of all, there were a few guys that were there that I knew, one of whom was Barton Simmons, who works with me now. And he had been a friend of mine, a childhood friend of mine. When I was on campus at MBA, I just fell in love with it. And I was blown away with the sense of community, the connection that the boys had. The fact that there weren't like bells that were rung to get you in and out of class. And I don't know, it's obviously a beautiful place. It's only gotten better since I've left. And so I was like, I'm going to do this. And fortunately, I got in. I don't know how I got in. But one of the great lessons I learned was that I'm not entitled to anything. I felt like as an athlete, I was kind of an outsider. And for anyone who was not kind of in that pipeline of, getting there in the 7th grade or coming from a traditional school that feed MBA, you understand what, being an outsider means. There's nothing known about you. It's all about the work you do. And I think there were a lot more guarantees for me at Moore and at Hillsborough had I made those choices, but I was humbled by the fact that I had to earn my way on the field.
For sure.
And so that was a great lesson. I was surrounded by great coaches, which is the case there now. I mean, just men that were going to build into me and build scaffolding in my life that paid dividends for me for a long time. And then academically, I got my butt kicked, and I spent the latter part of my time at MBA digging myself out of the hole that I found myself in early in MBA, but I needed that. When I got to college was easy, and I got to Vanderbilt as a transfer, and that only happened because when I went to college, I started doing really well in school, and all of that goes back to the training I had in the classrooms at MBA, and the fact that, again, no different than you're not entitled to something on the field, we weren't entitled to good grades in the classroom. You had to earn them, and if you weren't putting the work in, you were going to get exposed. It's stressful when you're 15, 16, whatever, 17, 18. It's stressful.
Absolutely.
But that is gold when it comes to setting a course for success in your life.
For sure. Our next one here is, I'm sure we had a few overlaps on teachers, because I know a few teachers at MBA have been there a very long time, but is there anyone particularly that influenced you the most at MBA?
Well, sure. Obviously, there were a lot of coaches. Ricky Bowers was my coach, and he was there for a really long time and actually went to school there. Since it moved on, Brad Joya, was a big influence on me. It's interesting. I found myself in Mr. Joya's office a couple of times, not for good reasons, and I was always, not at the time, in reflection, I was always impressed by his firmness, but also the compassion he showed for a young person who was trying to figure it out. And there were a couple times where I very easily could have been removed from that school population because I was growing up. And I think NBA is a place of standards and expectations, but also where there's the understanding that 15-year-olds, 16-year-olds are going to make mistakes. So Mr. Joya was a huge influence. Mr. Kelly, I had a couple of English teachers that made a big difference for me. Mr. Kelly being one of them, who he was early in on his teaching career. In fact, I think I was the first class he had there. His passion for his craft and the friendship we built, honestly, was something that I really I still value. Mr. Klausner, who's recently retired, probably had the single biggest impact on me in a time when I was just trying to screw things up. I think he recognized what was good in me and was helped to pull that out in the classroom, and really appreciated him. I could go on and on. Dr. Shackelford taught me statistics. I think it was the only math class that I ever had success in, and I credit him with that. I always say this about being a football coach. I hope that the players feel like, God, if I had Coach Lee as a physics teacher, or if I had Coach Lee as an English lit professor, that I would enjoy his class, because teachers have to be engaging. They have to know how to disseminate the information they hold the rights to, but they have to get it to the student in digestible chunks. Dr. Shackelford had a real skill at that. So those are a few names. There are many, many more, but certainly, again, a place where the people left such an impression on me.
That's funny you say Mr. Kelly, because I actually have him this year, and I wonder if his reading quizzes were just as hard as they were when you were there than they are now.
By the way, too, just on Mr. Kelly, I made a big mistake in his class also, and you want to talk about compassion and it's interesting, a lot of the best relationships that I had were forged through mistakes I made. I think that it's natural for that to happen with a coach, because we make mistakes every day as athletes, whether in our execution or being a minute late or whatever, and so in the classroom sometimes we feel like, and I think this message for the students, just to say, the secret is not to make the same mistake twice. But when you screw things up, if you've been humble about it and owned it, you understand that the severity of certain mistakes. Those are opportunities to build connection with people, and Mr. Kelly showed me some compassion, and I think a lot of that was where our friendship was forged.
Quick one here. Remember the hardest class you took at MBA?
Well, German was really hard. That was my choice. We did Latin for 2 years, and then I took German, and that was probably a mistake. But I enjoyed, I enjoyed the language in the class. It was something different. I just wanted to do something different.
I believe you were a 3-sport athlete: basketball, baseball, and football. Was it hard to narrow down on which one you were going to choose when you're choosing for college, and if you had to do it again, would you choose differently?
So it's two things. One is I played 3 sports for 2 years, and then I finished my last 2 years as just a baseball and football player. I probably regret that. I think play as many sports as you can for as long as you can. I think so often we get obsessed with what the next level looks like, and the reality is the next level doesn't exist for most people. And so stop trying to plot into your future and just enjoy being a part of a team and the suffering and sacrifice that allows for in that kind of shared team environment. And so, my decisions in college, I thought I was going to be a Major League Baseball player. That's why I chose to pursue baseball. That was obviously flawed thinking. But I also think I started my baseball career at a time when we weren't really talking about the psychological aspects of sports. And I got the yips. I didn't know it at the time, but that's what I was experiencing. Where when I got to college, it was like I couldn't hit, couldn't catch, couldn't throw. And that's not a good combination. And so there was just some self-discovery that went on in my first 2 years of college where by the time I was needing to make a real decision on my future, I recognized I'm not going to be a Major League Baseball player. I want to be successful doing something. And the way I saw it is, what's the common thread of the most successful people I know? They all went to good schools. So let me get into the best possible school I can get into, and that was Vanderbilt. At that point, I wanted sports to be a healthy part of my development. It wasn't going to be transactional. I knew I wasn't going to be an NFL player, but I thought, I learned who I am through competition, through being a part of a team. I think that's so important, and so it became a really healthy part of the way I finished my college career. And ultimately, that would be the advice I would give, is just, hey, don't try to plot out what's ahead. Focus on what you get out of being a part of something now, and that's a way healthier way to look at it than try to say what's going to get me. If you're good enough to play in college, they'll find you, and if you're good enough to play professionally, you'll know. All right, don't try to convince yourself otherwise.
For sure. I don't know if you've seen the Netflix show Quarterback, but they kind of go through I think it's 3 different quarterbacks, and Patrick Mahomes talks about how playing baseball actually really helped him play football. Did you find that at all to be true for you?
I think all sports intertwine. One of the things about football is it's not really unless you're a quarterback or a kicker, it's not really about the low level skills or the minutia, the fundamental technical skills. You can get a lot of general athletic movement, hand-eye coordination from other sports. Our game is a game of execution, and it's 11 people on the field working together, and so you can come into football later in life and be successful. But there's overlap in every game I played. Whether or not, I think one of the things that baseball did give to me was this early kind of experience in coaching, because I was a catcher, and my job in college was I was like 3rd string, 4th string, and so between me and the other freshmen at Birmingham Southern, I'd warm the pitchers up to go in the game, and that can just become like a game of pitch and toss. But it also can become a conversation that prepares someone to go out and do something that they have passion to do. And so I started to understand my role in not just preparing the pitcher by warming his arm up, but being someone that we could talk about the game situation and talk about what he felt good with or what he didn't feel good about. And it just started to build a connection that way. And that was kind of my first glimpse into what coaching was like.
Okay. You already kind of talked about this, but what went into the decision in changing sports? You already kind of talked about like why you switched colleges really, but the sports changing aspect of that, what went into that?
My first love was always football. Okay. That was the sport I was best at. I was looking at it. I mean, I was a 5'10" in high school. I mean, I don't know, 220-pound nose guard and tight end. I mean, those guys aren't marketable for college and pro sports, so I just felt like there wasn't a chance for me to level up. By the time I was coming here, I knew I wanted to play football again, and part of that was because I hadn't had a great experience in baseball personally, and so they needed a fullback here. I thought that's something I could do, and that's the reason. I had a real passion for football that I'd missed in my years playing baseball.
When did you realize that coaching was what you were going to do in your life?
I think when I was, even when I was playing baseball in college, I was thinking about coaching high school football. Okay. And part of that was just because the impact high school football had on my life. And it's a cool game. I mean, football's a real strategic game. I mean, there's a chess match that goes on, and as a coach, you interject in every play, But obviously, you don't like put all your chips into that. So I was going to go to law school. I was a political science major here, and I'm not really sure what the back end of that would have been. when I finished playing, I thought, if I have any inkling to be a college football coach, which I had started thinking about, and I'd started thinking about being, in fact, I can remember as a fifth-year senior talking about being the head coach at Vanderbilt someday. I mean, those were conversations that I had. I thought if I was ever going to do that, I need to start with that, because you don't see a lot of people that start elsewhere and then ultimately make their way into college. And so that was the choice I made, and that I set sail on a now what is, I guess, nearing a 20-year journey, and I'm really glad I did.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Our next one here is being a player and being a coach. Do you see recruiting differently from both perspectives?
Well, certainly I do. When I was coming out and being recruited, and I would put quotations around that because it wasn't like I was really sought after. Obviously, the world has changed dramatically. So I see recruiting now through the lens of a parent, which I'm a parent. I've got 3 children, 11, 8, and 6, and 2 boys that I hope eventually will join the crew at NBA. We'll see. I'm going to let them make their own choices. But recruiting to me it's become a really it's just murky waters. Mm-hmm. This is a lot of times it's a year-long process, and it starts in earnest kind of the winter of someone's junior year and finishes the winter of their senior year. And for a recruit, most college football programs do the best they can to sell an image of what their program will be, but not always authentically what their program will be. We spend a lot of time here on being genuine in our process, because I don't want to convince someone to come somewhere and have them show up and say, wait, this is different. Where's all the things that I was promised? Yeah. That a lot of that has to do with what I would expect as a parent. As a parent, I want my kids treated fairly. I want them challenged but supported. I want to know that when they're having a bad day, that someone's going to show up in their dorm room or call them into the office. I want to know that there's going to be someone there to celebrate with them when they have a good day. And I think those are expectations that we should put on the people that we empower to steward the experiences of our children over an important transformational 4 years. So that guides a lot of what we do recruiting wise here, and I believe ultimately it's the right way to do it.
Okay. Kind of transitioning more here to being a coach from UCLA now to Vandy. How did each coaching position prepare you for the next one, ultimately for Vanderbilt?
So, I got my start at UCLA. I was a volunteer. I got a parking pass because I made the milkshakes in the weight room. I'd get in at 4:45, make the protein shakes, and then I'd go up to the office and whatever projects, stapling papers and pouring coffee. Well, I just tried to do whatever I was doing at the highest level. I had this mindset that if we're going to win a national championship, it's because in my role as volunteer that I'm executing at a national championship level. And then I'd go in the afternoon at 1 o'clock, I'd go to a place called Harvard Westlake, which is a prep school in LA, and I was the freshman defensive coordinator there. Cool. So I'd do that, and that got me a stipend to pay my rent. And I'd go back after that practice, and I'd work till midnight. I'd do it all over again the next day. And in that role, I had responsibilities, but a lot of what I was doing was studying on my own and trying to force learning, and just paying attention. I connected with a couple of mentors in the office, that older coaches that didn't have families, that I could ask questions. I'd try to have 10 questions every day that I'd ask, just try to learn. I believe coaching's about gaining expertise, and I think you can fake it, but I never wanted to be a fake coach. I wanted to be able to be a great teacher and have impact, and so I needed to learn. And so I share all that to say, I think, and everyone experiences this, I think, to some level. I mean, I probably some people will have kind of what they have their life plotted out and say, I'm going to I'm going to become an attorney or a dentist or a doctor, and they go to school and they live in Nashville and they do that. I just didn't. I was taking a non-traditional course, and my joy was stolen at times in the process or the journey because I was so worried about what the future was. The best decisions I've made in my career are focusing on what's in front of me. So how did each stop set me up for the next stop? When I stopped worrying about what the next stop was and I focused on how do I do my job better here, I became better and I became more aware, and I set up systems and process within me that unlocked what the next step would be. And I did the same job for a long time. I was a linebackers coach in my career, essentially from the start until 2018, which would be like 13 years. And you can't grow tired of the monotony because the job isn't the same. Every day in my role as head coach here, I'm a little more advanced. I see it a little differently. There are some more nuances that I understand better. And that's kind of the fun of growing expertise and growing mastery. So in 2018, when I was elevated defensive coordinator at Notre Dame, I was not ready for that. I mean, that was a behemoth. And what I had to do was kind of reset and breathe and understand that what I needed was within me. How am I spending my time not worrying about what it's going to feel like to call a bad play, but trusting the people around me and taking the time I need to grow expertise in the role. And fortunately, all those years before, where I had learned how to, just focus on the present and farm my land and find the solutions, find the answers, served me really well when I made that jump. And so we played really well on defense, and I'm a part of that, but only a part, right? The players had a hand in that too, and it was my learning to trust them that ultimately I think unlocked my potential as a coach. I'm doing the same thing here. It's never going to be linear and it's never going to be perfect, but am I learning every day? Am I empowering the people around me? Am I becoming more effective in my role? Those are the things that I look for that excite me about what's to come next.
If you were to kind of compare conferences from UCLA, Wake Forest, I believe, Vanderbilt, how did each conference you coached in compare?
Everyone's a little different. The Pac-12, rest in peace, was a great place. Obviously I've always been biased to Southeastern football, so I had my little chip on my shoulder out there. One of the funnest leagues I coached in was the Missouri Valley Conference, and I was at South Dakota State. That is a great league, and we had some great rivalries in that league. I had a ton of fun there. The ACC is cool. I mean. And then Notre Dame was interesting because it's an independent. Mm-hmm. You're kind of all over the place, but nothing beats. There's nothing that comes close, I don't think, to the SEC. It's just love it or hate it. I think in my role, obviously I love the league and I love being a part of it. I want to see more Vanderbilt flags and yard signs in Nashville and T-shirts and hats. And so the passion that other fan bases have can be frustrating to me. But ultimately, people care so much about this game and this conference. The teams, the rivalries, the continuity, the actual fact that our conference, all the states are connected. That's a really cool thing. And I think Commissioner Sankey's done a great job of positioning this conference for long-term sustained success because of those choices in an era of expansion where we're not trying to stretch this from coast to coast. We're being smart about how we stay within our footprint, and I think that's only going to strengthen the brand.
Absolutely. Next one here is, where do you draw the line between academics and athletics for your players?
I don't believe in a line. I think that better people make better players. I think these guys aspire to be pros, and to be a pro, you have to do things that you don't always want to do, but you have to do them to a standard. So I don't treat them differently in their approach to sport as their approach to class. It's funny to me in my years now coaching, a mature person becomes a mature player, and you can see it all over the performance on the field. The way you live is the way you play. So, and I should say, the way you live is the way you train. The way you train is the way you play. And so we don't draw distinctions. Now, what I deal with is varying levels of academic background here. So some guys have come from great high schools with a ton of support. Some guys have come from high schools where they didn't have a bunch of support, maybe where the expectations were different. And so that's where we have to be really disciplined and pushing and enforcing our standards for what it means to be in class, to be engaged, to turn your work in on time, to engage the resources that are here to help you, and ultimately to understand that sitting in the classroom at Vanderbilt is going to be no different than sitting in the classroom in the NFL. Have you learned how to show up early, take notes, sit in the front row, ask good questions, engage with your teacher? Those are skills that will help you as your physical skills deplete. It's those soft skills that allow for you to take an NFL career from 1 contract to 2 and from 2 to 3.
Okay, so kind of quickly transitioning to Vanderbilt, what would you say your ideals for Vanderbilt football are each year?
Ideals meaning like goals?
Just kind of how you want the program to be, what you want the main focus for the players to be. Like, obviously winning is what the main focus is, but outside of winning, what you want the main focus for the players to be.
Yeah, so winning's a byproduct of process. Process is the actions, behaviors, the decisions, choices every day that we make. I think the one thing that has been a pretty significant challenge here has been just shifting the internal mindset around our process. And so, we because we came in pandemic, we've had a slower kind of transformation of our roster. And, what we need is to release old mindset to give way to new mindset. And sometimes it's hard to teach people how to interact differently in spaces that they've previously occupied. Again, to go back, winning is a lag effect. It's a byproduct of process. Process is about day in, day out investment. And with everything that we do, we have 5 covenants here: true brotherhood, which is about the interpersonal connection that we have to one another. Pride in everything we do. That's how you do anything, it's how you do everything, right? That if it has our logo on it, we're going to execute it with pride.
Okay.
Earn it every day, which is kind of the elimination of entitlement to anything, which is so critically important in our current landscape. Player-to-player accountability, which is about our ability to hold each other accountable and to communicate standards clearly. And then finally, recycle positive energy. Those 5 things, if you're asking for my ideals, I want those to manifest in every corner of this building and every corner of the campus. Now, that's the vision, and we're somewhere along the line of progression to that vision, and it's coming into focus, but it's not completely in focus. And I believe that once those 5 things come into focus, what you'll see on the field is a team that's tough and competitive, that plays hard, that is never out of the fight, and it's going to be a really exciting ticket to see. And in time, as we continue to build the talent of this roster, it'll be a dangerous team in our conference.
For sure. And then final couple questions here. If you had to give advice to future coaches, what would it be? And then what's the best advice you've received?
I think a future coach, what I would advise, I think when I got into coaching, there wasn't quite the celebrity in the profession that there is now, and so, nor was there the money. It was on the cusp. I think there were maybe a couple of coaches nationally that were making 7 figures, but it was just that wasn't the driving force for me. What I knew is I could make a good living doing it. To me, it was more about being a part of a team and still being competitive and wanting to be competitive, and also it is so sacred. Do you play sports?
I do.
Okay, what sports do you play?
Track and basketball.
All right, so to me, there is an unbelievable connection when done the right way between an athlete and a coach. that if you've ever had a coach that made you better, that had high expectations of you, sometimes we don't know how to do the things that we must do to unlock our potential. But when someone else reveals that to you and holds you accountable to it, we will do for others more than we'll do for ourselves at times. I think that there's just an incredible sacred relationship. And vice versa. I think as a coach, that relationship, when you have someone that is listening to you, that's paying attention, that is also teaching you, that'll communicate back to you. I believe that there's few things to me more special than that relationship.
For sure.
That's why I got into coaching. So advice to future coaches is examine what it is that you want, why you want to get into it.
Okay.
If it's to make other people better, if it's to learn about yourself, if it's to stay a part of a team and to be competitive, I say well done and go get it. If it's somehow self-serving or ego-driven, and we all have egos, okay? I mean, I didn't get into coaching to not be a head coach. I wanted to someday be in charge, so that's my ego, you know? But I feel like there's a healthy balance for me where, you know, my responsibility is in service of other people. That's what it is. So, you know, that's the first thing I would say. And then the second thing would be, don't let 20 years down the road rob you from what's in front of you right now. And I kind of spoke to that earlier. We can get so obsessed with making it, not making it. There's so much that's out of your control in coaching. So what you do is you shift focus to the things you do control, which are right in front of you. The best advice that I've ever received is really advice that came from my wife. And this was in a moment where I was, and she wasn't my wife at the time, she was my girlfriend. We were at South Dakota State, and I just finished my second season there. And I was a full-time linebacker coach there. I was having a blast. And I got a call to go back to UCLA, and I was going to go back as a graduate assistant. I think at the time I was 26.
Okay.
Maybe I just turned 27. Or maybe I just turned 26, I don't remember. It's all neither here nor there. The job that I was going to go back for was going to be a graduate assistant role.
Okay.
And I'd kind of already done that. And I'd gotten a master's degree while I was playing here, so I wasn't motivated by that. But the person that was calling me he had been the linebacker coach, he had trained me, he had been elevated to coordinator, and he wanted me to coach the linebackers as a GA. And so the perception was a step back. The reality was, and what I was motivated by, or what kind of lit me on fire was, can I learn how to train a group in the Pac-12, the highest level? Can I do that? Can I learn that about myself? And so as I was hemming and hawing over this decision, my girlfriend at the time, my wife now, sent me a quote, and I think it's Charles Dubois. I'm sorry that I'm almost certain that's who it is. It's the important thing is this, to be able at any moment to sacrifice what you are for what you could become. And the minute she had sent and I read that, I knew I had to go, because so much of what I was hanging on to was this perception of being a full-time coach and having my own position group and all these things that in my mind I had earned. And I knew that to find out what I was capable of ultimately, I had to be willing to let go of that, to step back and to hopefully level up so that I could, you know, have the opportunity to do what I'm doing today. I think that's such a, obviously I still remember the quote, and it's just something I think that we could all take from it. We fight for the perception of who we are every day, but we spend less time focused on our growth and how we're challenged, and we honestly don't learn about ourselves by getting patted on the back or by feeling like we've arrived. We learn through the process of becoming, through the mistakes and the failures we have, to getting our ass kicked, if I can say that on this podcast. I hope I'm within bounds there. And getting up and dusting off and moving forward. And that to me is what we need to be focused on. Not this sense of validation for where we are, but this sense of journey for where we're headed. And that's something that I want to define the rest of my competitive life.
All right, really quick, 2 more quick questions. For a normal person, is it harder to hit a home run in the MLB, score 10 points in the NBA, or rush for 10 yards in the NFL? For your average person.
Yeah, this reminds me of like an argument that would come up around break time. They still serve cookies at break time. Yeah,
they do.
Yeah, I'm going to say to hit a home run in the MLB, because I think the factors, it's not just about your ability to swing the bat and have the power to hit the ball that far. It's also the ability of the pitcher to make you miss. Mm-hmm. And not that the other 10 points in basketball I think would be the easiest of the 3.
Okay.
Because we can all get lucky.
Yeah.
And rushing for 10 yards, if you have a good O-line, you got a chance. You might not get touched. I think that the one-on-one nature of the MLB would make that the hardest of the 3.
Okay, and then our last question here is, how do you define greatness? So however you want to take that.
Yeah, I believe that greatness is small, not big. I don't think it's the moments that we celebrate. I think it's the moments that are unseen, and that's, it kind of goes back to what I said earlier. You have to get beat up sometimes. You have to get knocked down, and I think it's the getting up that is the moment of greatness, and everything that comes after is just the lag effect of that one choice.
Okay. Well, thank you again so much for doing this with me today. Unless you have anything else to add, thank you.
No, that's great. Appreciate you having me.